The Vulcan Mind Meld is something that we see a lot in Star Trek for its practical applications across a myriad of situations. However, I feel this has downplayed the importance, toll and consequence of using mind melds. So, Vulcans are mainly tactile telepaths, in that they have to make physical contact with another creature in order to use their psionic abilities. However, there are some elements to their telepathy that are more akin to other species, such as the Betazoids or Tarquins species, in that they have an extensive range to them. Vulcans have a bioelectrical field generated by their nervous system, which they have a limited amount of conscious control over. This can be concentrated into their fingertips, which allows them to extend their control over their own nervous system through their hands and gain limited sway over another's. This has led them to develop things like the nerve pinch, mind meld, and the ability to simply mess with another person's system for the purpose of harming them. Although non-Vulcans can perform the nerve pinch too, so presumably it's just a technique that can be learned, although I imagine having a Vulcan's affinity for manipulating the bioelectric field helps a lot. So, bringing it back to the mind meld specifically. It's been a part of Vulcan culture since their earliest records, part and parcel of their unique biology and psionic heritage. In ancient times, their powers were often used as weapons, and even led to the creation of devices like the psionic feedback device, the Stone of Gol. By the time of Awakening, when Surak's teachings rose to prominence during a Vulcan civil war, part of his lessons concerned the culture and the application and use of their telepathic abilities. His teachings valued mental discipline, which would have only benefited their mental powers, and the control that Vulcans practiced to restrain their emotions also taught them how to resist and fortify their mental defences. The practice of the mind meld, however, was forgotten over the generations as a more conservative Vulcan government rose, which was eventually revealed to be in part due to the interference of Romulan agents within their government. I've already mentioned this as a theory, but I like it, so I'll mention it again here, but I suspect that the Romulans purposefully obscured and outlawed the use of mind melds and such in order to bolster their control over Vulcan. After all, a psychic reading of an infiltrator's mind would undo centuries of their groundwork in manipulating the Vulcans. Eventually, the discovery of the Kishara brought back Surak's original, unedited teachings, including the proper instruction of telepathic techniques. The merger of minds, at its core, is a blending of thoughts that allows the participants to share memories and thought processes, as well as everything that entails. This is a personal experience, to say the least, as it allows for the reading of any stray thought or memory, an obvious and sometimes unintentional invasion of privacy, although the participants do have some say on what thoughts are accessed. On the Vulcans' part, it also exposes them to the emotions of the other, outside of the context of that Vulcan's emotional repression, and can prove to be an uncomfortable experience, not least because it may be tempting to experience those feelings vicariously. It is also a possibility that as the minds end up sharing thought processes, that the sense of individuality is endangered, creating a situation where the meld cannot be easily terminated because you can no longer identify whose mind is whose. After a meld is severed, both participants effectively leave an echo of each other in the mind. The way that person thought, some trace memories and feelings are forever imprinted on the psyche of the other, especially if the initiator has a pre-existing emotional investment in the other. In this case, it's not even unheard of that a permanent bond is formed as part of the katra is left in the mind. Such are the effects of a mind meld that it can lead to a permanent change in personality, a vague imparting of skills, and even faint memories and feelings from the other person that can be detected through subsequent melds with unaffiliated individuals. A mind meld can also be done incorrectly, leading to Panar syndrome, which is a degenerative neural disorder that often proves to be eventually fatal. Fortunately, the damage Panar inflicts can be reversed with a mind meld. To use a computer analogy, I imagine it's like tampering with some lines of code to mind meld while not realising that those alterations now clash with further lines and break the overall coding. It then takes an experienced practitioner to go back in, find the bad lines and redo them, or at least alter the remainder of the code to better fit. A mind meld can also be resisted with conscious effort, mental discipline and force of will. Doing so was often uncomfortable, and if the initiator continued to try to force a joining of minds, it could potentially harm both participants, doing real physical and psychological damage to the brain. Often a meld was terminated if there was a sign of resistance, because of the potential damage, and exceptionally strong minds could simply close off their thoughts altogether. This was a commonly taught technique for intelligence operatives of several governments, and of course some species were simply incompatible with Vulcan mind melds or telepathy in general. Using a mind meld on an unwilling person is not a good idea unless you are desperate for information or something. From the disregard of morals for violating someone's privacy to the natural resistance that most minds will put up from such an act, truly I imagine it takes a greater degree of control to allow a mind meld to occur than it would to resist it. However, it is a tool in the Vulcan arsenal that is far too useful to ignore, and it has a variety of applications. Discipline and practice can allow for a high mitigation of side effects, and experienced Vulcans, such as Spock and Surak, can deploy mind melds to be as light or as heavy-handed as needed for a variety of beneficial, tactical, and medical reasons. Honestly though, if mind melds were a thing, I don't think I'd want one. There's some chaotic stuff up there that would really probably mess up a Vulcan, and Vulcans get scary when they're messed up. I've been Rick, and thanks for watching this breakdown on the Vulcan mind meld. What do you think of it? Convenient plot tool, or something that should be treated with a little more gravity with lasting consequences? Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.